Welcome back to another episode of the Agency Growth Club. Today, I'm joined by Nick Eubanks. Nick is the founder of From the Future, which he exited to private equity. He was the co-founder at Traffic Think Tank that got acquired by SEMrush. His new project, Assassins Only, is an exclusive mastermind for agency owners. He's also VP at Own Media at SEMrush, and he coaches a lot of our clients, and he's a personal friend of mine that I've only ever heard great things about. So in this podcast, we sit down and we talk about the failures and the mistakes Nick has made along the way so you don't have to make them. So we cover his story about losing millions in client revenue after acquiring 2 agencies in 6 days, times when he had to put payroll on credit cards, periods when him and his partners couldn't even take paychecks and they had to eat ramen for 2 or 4 weeks to make sure employees got paid, the nightmare client who threatened to sue them and how business insurance saved them, and why Nick stepped down as a CEO. So you're going to want to stick around because this was a super valuable podcast. Nick, you have successfully started and exited quite a few agencies. And I think why your opinion would be so valued within this podcast is because you actually coach a lot of agency owners as well. So you're kind of at the forefront of seeing what's going right, what's going wrong. So within your agency journey, what's been the most expensive lesson that you've had, Nick?
The most expensive lesson was probably also the what I consider to be my my largest professional mistake, which was I decided to buy an agency in the end of 2017. And when I started putting that deal together, another one kind of came up at the same time. And so I didn't expect the deals to close as close to one another as they did, but I found myself in a position where I think the first agency acquisition closed on January 6th of 2018. And then the second one was like January 12th. So like 6 days apart. And, looking back at it, I don't know what I was thinking. I had never bought an agency before, and like having just the pure ego to think that I could not only integrate one set of team members and one set of clients into my team and my clients and my workflow, but the gall to think that I could do it with 2 agencies at the same time was like completely insane. It's like kind of psychopathic to think that I could make that actually work. It didn't work. It went horribly wrong. So in the first probably 6 months, we churned probably 30% of the client revenue that we acquired. So like millions of dollars, and lost a bunch of incredible team members, just because the organizational planning that me and my partners had laid out that we thought would work didn't work. Just because of a sheer lack of experience. I think the biggest lesson, the more expensive lesson, right, if we just look at the client revenue side of things, was thinking that we could buy clients that were used to being delivered the same services, but being delivered those services in a different way. And just being like, well, we don't do it that way. And so we're just going to deliver these people that are paying for these services. We're just going to deliver these services the way that we deliver them for everybody else. And thinking that like clients would just be okay with that. They would just, be so thrilled to be working with us. They weren't. And so it was like just just bled hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for a while. Pretty much through all of 2018, actually. It was a rough year, but a very expensive lesson.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a very expensive lesson. And so you obviously coach quite a lot of agency owners, and you do the masterminds and the events. What's one thing across the board, Nick, that you see within these agency owners that they're kind of doing wrong, that not necessarily is an easy fix, but something that you can just see across the board?
Probably the most common thing that I see, and it's not wrong. I think it's different. I think there are some misconceptions, and those misconceptions drive like a weakness in this area. And so I'd say the most common thing when I come in to look at any small agency, right? So any agency under 5 million in revenue, up to, we'll call it 40 people or so, is they're not running their operations the right way. And I feel like a little bit of a broken record. I feel like I talk about it all the time, but what I used to think resource management was, and resource utilization, how resource utilization was supposed to be managed, was just wrong. It wasn't something I figured out. It was finally when I built a board in 2018, I made these purchases, and the bottom started to sort of fall out after these acquisitions, and I went sort of looking for help in any direction possible. And I came across somebody who had sold 3 agencies. His last sale was a huge exit to a $100 million agency, and he took a look at what we were doing, and he just asked some poignant questions that like immediately sort of uncovered like what I that I didn't know, what I didn't know, which was how to actually run resource utilization correctly. And the easiest way to describe it was, I used to believe that whenever we got to capacity, also what I believed capacity was, which was also not the right way to look at production capacity from an agency services standpoint. But what I used to do was, when we would get to 70%, I would go make a hire, and I got obsessed with, which I think a lot of young founders do. Like when we got to probably somewhere between 10 and 15 employees, I sort of became obsessed with how big the team size was. Well, I've got a team of 20 or 25 or 30, or, up to 50 something at some point. And it became this like really big vanity way to sort of stroke my ego. And I was hiring folks, when we still had capacity left, but in my mind, the justification was, well, I don't ever want to not be able to service a client or handle additional capacity requests from a client or sign a new client, because what if we don't have the people to fulfill the services? And what I didn't realize at the time, but what I was doing was, by always hiring when there was still 30% capacity left in a given department, was guaranteeing that 30% margin that you should be shooting for as a net margin, in a pro services business, was just never going to happen. It was just guaranteeing we were just never going to make any money. And it wasn't until the sort of wool got pulled, taken off my eyes from my board member, that was like, you need to be running it, 95 to 105%. Like, you want to be overextended. You want to be running hot. That's how you make money in an agency. And you shouldn't be making a hire for a role until until your projected utilization for at least the next 2 months is over 100%, and you don't have contract resources that you can lean on. Or if the delta between your contract resource costs and your full-time W-2 full-time team member costs is close enough within your operating margin that it's a no-brainer. So I think that's just a big thing. It's just a lot of agencies. The most common thing is the lack of resource management, but that's the symptom, right? What the disease sort of is most agencies are overstaffed, and nobody wants to hear that, because if you don't have a good system for measuring your resource management, resource capacity, you're just listening to your team members, and they're not trying to be dishonest, but they don't know any better. They're just like, oh, we need help. We've got too much work. We're overworked, and there's probably other inefficiencies in your processes that are driving that, but if you listen to your people to always tell you that they're stretched too thin, and you don't rely on the time slips for what the work is actually being done, you're just sort of setting yourself up to not take a lot of money home.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that a lot at the minute with all the redundancies that are happening, as sad as they are. But exactly what you said, there is a lot of agencies out there that are overstaffed. And Nick, cash flow is a topic that I don't really see a lot of people talk about, especially on social platforms. I'm sure you guys have dealt with a lot of cash flow management issues. How have you dealt with them?
I mean, there's the way I used to deal with them, and then there's the way that I think you probably should deal with them. I mean, used to deal with them was like, I've had those days where I've had to put payroll on a credit card. There's definitely, especially earlier on, there were payment cycles where me and my partners would just not take a paycheck and just be like, well, if we're going to make payroll, we don't get to get paid this pay period. So at least the employees get paid, but we're eating ramen for the next 2 to 4 weeks. And then, the way you should take care of them ideally is, there's a handful of strategies, but I think that the most sustainable one is preparing for shit to hit the fan from a cash flow perspective, preparing for clients to pay you late or not pay you at all, especially if there's like a change of the guards, right? Like, let's say you're a marketing agency owner and you're selling it to CMO and they get fired and you've got an open invoice, or God forbid, 2 open invoices. And the executives that are there, they're looking at preserving cash flow. They don't give a shit about making sure you get paid if they're not using you anymore. So like, take them to small claims court, whatever, God forbid. The best way to be proactive, right, is to have at least 3 months of all operating expenses in your cash, like cash in the bank. Have at least the same amount of money, 3 months of operating expenses, and open AR, open accounts receivable, and hopefully less than 90 days aging on the street. I know lots of agency owners, especially small agencies that have all their clients pay on credit card. And if you can do that, that's great until you get to a certain level, right? Once you're over 100 grand a month, you're talking about 3 grand a month or 36 grand a year. That's almost a full-time entry level salary that you're paying in just processing fees. So, taking ACH payments, taking invoices, receiving, old school paper checks actually becomes, part of a cash flow strategy. And then the other thing, this was a really cool lesson I got from an accountant early on, which was like, hey, you should really try to have 2 payment cycles, like 2 invoice cycles for your agency every month. So like making sure that, you want to try to keep it roughly 50-50, which is about half your invoices go out at the beginning of the month, about half of your invoices go out in the middle of the month. And it's a really easy way to do it if you just put a really simple, process in place for it, which is like, whenever the deal signs, the invoice should go out the day the deal signs, right? Small agency, get the cash in the door. Don't wait for it. It's invoice immediately. I don't care if it's the 6th or the 12th or the 25th, invoice, get the cash in. But then depending on when that date was, they fall into one of 2 invoice cycles, right? So if the invoice if the deal gets signed and the first invoice goes out and it's before the 15th of the month, then the next invoice is getting sent in the 1st of the month, and they're on the 1st of the month payment cycle moving forward. If it's after the 15th, if it's the 15th, the 30th, the 31st, they're on the 2nd payment cycle. And so all the rest of those invoices, for that client, all the rest of their invoices will get scheduled to automatically go out on the 15th. And so you have about, ideally, you want to try to constantly, that's never quite 50-50, but 60-40 even. But this way you've got cash coming in at multiple points in the month, and you want to try to structure your fixed payments too. Like if you can push some of your credit card payments to the end of the month, and try to look at putting a gap in between when you've got like big payments coming due and when your payroll cycles are. And most payroll cycles are the 1st and the 15th. And so try to push, payments on your line of credit or payments on a credit card or your software payments, try to spread them out a little bit. I think the biggest thing that really payroll is going to be the biggest expense, right, for any agency. But outside of payroll, if you can try to not have any other giant sort of balloon payments coming, because those put you in the most precarious position. There's nothing like having 25 grand in receivables and then you've got 15 grand in payments that are hitting, and you've got the cash flow. It's just not physically in the bank at the moment.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I've never really heard the start of the month and the end of the month. It feels like it's a very easy solution when you put it out like that.
And it's all just treading water, right? So, it's like you can have all the AR on the books. It's just when do the payments come in and when do they have to go out? So it's like it's just a balancing act.
Awesome. And Nick, I feel like right now there's a lot of agencies that are going through slow periods of growth. What kind of advice have you had in the past of maybe slow periods of growth, and what strategies do you use to get out of it?
So the easiest one, right, is upselling and starting to get really more proactive about upselling than you have before. And there's a couple ways to do it, right? Like one of the things that I think is kind of fascinating is, you should be shooting for 70% of your revenue growth every year as an agency to come from existing clients instead of new business. I think that number kind of surprises a lot of people. But the way that you do that is, let's say you have 10 clients, you should be able to squeeze out 6 to 8% of revenue growth from those clients on a quarterly basis. You schedule a quarterly business review, which is a sort of a competitive analysis meeting. You set the expectation like, hey, I'm going to need an hour and a half of your time. I need decision makers on this. There's a really specific format for how those should be run. There's a really specific cadence for how that format should be presented. Like it's not just your typical meeting. It is an upsell meeting. That is the whole point of that meeting. But then there's also like just simpler strategies that I think people don't think about, like include an upsell for a few $1,000s. Maybe it's $1,500 to $3,500, but include an upsell in every single deliverable that goes out to your clients. Multiple deliverables a month, multiple upsells per month. Just have a rotating door of upsells that you just include. It's on the last slide, the last page of a document. Just like, hey, based on this that we did, we actually think it'd be a really good idea if we went and we did this, or we did this, we took a look at this, or we built this new page, or we launched this new campaign. It doesn't matter what it is, depending on your scope, but like just offering those upsell services, right? Like one of my favorite ways to characterize it is if you look at, you buy a car, right? And you're in there and you're signing all this freaking paperwork anyway, and they still hit you with just this menu. Do you want the wheel care? Do you want to prepay your services? Do you want to accident protection? Do you want paint protection? Do you want this extended warranty? Do you want you're literally buying a brand new car, and they're trying to tell you all the things that are going to go wrong with your car additionally, because you're in buy mode. It's the best time.
Quick pause. If you're getting value from this conversation about scaling agencies and hiring top talent, I want to share something that might help you. Are you struggling to find A players for your digital marketing agency? We've got you covered. For SEO experts who turn rankings into revenue, head to SEOforhire.co. For paid media specialists who boost your bottom line, check out paidmediajobs.com. And if you're looking for foot rubs, you're definitely in the wrong podcast. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
Awesome. And when is the right time to have that upsell meeting with the client?
QBRs, yeah. So once every quarter. Schedule it. I've got all my coaching clients. I'm telling now, like they should have all their QBRs scheduled for all their clients for all of Q1. Before the end of November.
Awesome. Very, very interesting. And Nick, you've been through a lot in terms of agencies with all the coaching, with all the mentorship, with your own agencies. What's one thing that you wish you knew that you know now at the start?
Probably how long it takes to hire senior talent, like good senior talent. And I wish I would have started focusing more on growing my own talent, growing entry-level folks to be leaders, to be mid-level managers, to be directors, to start growing them much, much sooner. So you get to a place where if you can't make a senior level hire, you at least have people that can kind of spread the workload around and who are on a path to become those folks. Ultimately you can't build an agency unless you've got fantastic talent, right? It's your weakest link is going to be the person who is the least capable. And anything you can do to strengthen the folks that are on your team and up sort of the value of that team, I think is something that I didn't focus on as early as I should have. And then on the flip side of that, I also would have hired some HR support way before I needed it. It was one of those things where it didn't really cross my mind until probably we were, over 20 people. But I've had several folks that are, that have mentioned man, I really wish I would have gotten some contract outsourced HR support at 10 folks. Probably could have avoided a whole bunch of situations in terms of conflicts between employees. Certain managers don't like other managers, client conflict. There's just the human resource management and managing personalities, especially when there's 10 or more of them. Becomes something you don't really think a lot about until it becomes way too late. On that flip side, that was getting good business insurance was also something that I got kind of coached into, and was really happy I had it. I had one nightmare client that threatened us because they didn't like the quality of the work, and the quality of the work was we delivered this huge strategy, but they didn't want to pay for implementation. So, it was one of those things where here was the scope and the budget, and they're like, well, that's too much. And they're like, oh, we'll just do this all ourselves. And then 3 months went by after we had been following up on monthly calls and making sure that they understood, implementation. And I remember it was after 90 days, so it was probably the month 4 phone call. They were like, when are we going to start seeing growth? And me and the team lead, we kind of looked at each other. We're like, once the things are implemented, have you guys made any changes to the website? They're like, no. There was just a complete mental disconnect where these folks thought that we could deliver work but not do any implementation. They didn't make a single change to the website, and they were wondering when the growth was going to start coming in terms of traffic. And so they had threatened to, sue us to get the money back. We ended up, we had great insurance, and because of the great insurance that we had, our attorney was like, you guys got nothing to worry about here. Even if they do want to file this BS claim, you're covered under errors and omissions, and you got nothing to worry about. So there's definitely some peace of mind that comes from business insurance that is a lesson I think you hopefully nobody has to learn, but it's definitely one that something you don't think about until you have to think about it.
Yeah, and this takes us on to So my next question is quite a more personal question as well. Is, I'm a young business owner. The way I look at clients is like, we need to bring anybody and everybody in. And I'm learning the more that I'm getting experienced on it, that you can't serve all clients. And sometimes a bad client is just as bad as bringing in a bad person like into your actual team. So how do you deal with bad clients? And have you got like a client vetting process?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing you should be doing is, and this is really hard to hear, I think, if you're under $1 million a year, this is going to sound crazy, because it's going to feel like you're just taking money out of your own pocket. But you should fire the bottom 10% of your clients every year, just regardless. It just forces you to work, because like for every 10 terrible clients that are out there, there is one fantastic client that will be thrilled to work with you. They'll pay on time. They'll appreciate your work. It'll be a long-term partnership, and those types of relationships are, that's what makes a service business fantastic. Is really working with great clients. My favorite way to fire clients, though, is to force them to fire themselves, which is you add the asshole fee, right? Which is like, at the end, and now is the perfect time to do it. Set the expectation like, our prices are going up for 2025. Maybe you're going to make a 5% price adjustment across the board, but you've got a client that you can't stand. And so maybe they get a 15% price increase. And whatever the number is that can force you to stomach dealing with that client, it's like, well, I know they're a nightmare. As long as they're not mean to your team. I think that's one thing that it doesn't matter. There's no amount of money to risk losing team members over a bad client. If they're not mean to your team and they're just needy and they're just kind of a pain in the ass and like they just don't really appreciate the work, but they're not mean, they're still polite to your team members, then you just charge them enough money until they go away. And if they stay, you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, well, they're paying the asshole tax. They can hang out.
That's very, very funny. Okay, so Nick, you're sitting down with your strategy team and you're strategizing how you can double your revenue within the next year. What kind of topics and strategies are you discussing?
There's a multi-pronged approach. So the one thing that one of my favorite things to say to generally, it's certainly SEO agency owners, and it's generally SEO agency owners that are in their first few years. And that is, the worst way to grow your SEO agency is SEO. Unfortunately, it's a long-term game. The best way is to have some sales enablement content that's well done, that speaks to your UVP, to understand, who your exact client profile, your ideal customer profile actually is. And then to do a mix of scaled outbound and ABM. Scaled outbound used to mean email. Email can be a component of it, but I think at this point, you have to be doing DMs on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. You have to be running ads, not search either, like running paid social ads, using Insta and Facebook for like a lower cost awareness, low cost emails, building dynamic remarketing list that you feed into LinkedIn for, even better, like lower funnel video targeting. But, paid acquisition works really well. You just have to give it time. You have to test the creatives, but I think it'd be a mix of like very meticulous ABM, like the Dream 100, if you know what that is, like the Dream 100 exercise, go through that, run an ABM campaign, have somebody, even if it's you as the founder, it's probably should be you. The best use of your time as a founder up until you're at least $5 million times is leveraging your personal brand to build leads and business for the company. But, send 2 emails a day, personal emails that, you write by hand. You send, do stuff that doesn't scale when you have time. Because, as the company gets bigger and bigger, you will have less and less time, and you'll have to, or the things that need to happen, you'll have to pay other people to do. And the more important it gets, the more expensive they get. So, it'd be a mix of just like, there is no one right answer. Like, I think a growth engine takes, there's 5 or 10 components realistically, but getting outbound up and running and scaled, you can sort of put it on the shelf and let that run in the background. And then, make sure you're asking your clients for referrals. Ideally every month, not every client every month, but have like a little 3-point scoring rubric, which is like, cold, medium, cold, warm, hot. Cold is like, they're cool. Everything's cool. Nothing to worry about. If they're cool again next month, we'll ask them for a referral. Warm is like, I don't really know. They could be cool. They could be hot. I'm not sure. And hot is like, this person is pissed. They're on fire. They need attention. Go put out the fire. That whoever's managing the client, the account manager, account executive, that should be the person who's like every single interaction with any client. You should be scoring those interactions, and you get 2 cools, that's a great time to ask for a referral.
Awesome. And Nick, what's been the hardest skill or knowledge area to master as an agency owner?
Probably realizing like when you, at least for me, realizing when like I was probably the number one thing holding back the company. When it was like, I want to do too much. Like I liked sales. I liked creating content. I thought of myself as a leader. Not a great leader, not a great people manager, is I think is the bigger thing. And just realizing like I'm not a people manager, and it's really hard to be an agency CEO if you're not a people manager, unless you've got a great operations person, somebody who can be in the grind. But if you look at it from an EOS model, you've got the innovator and the operator, and I'm just not an operations person. I'm like a 0 to 1 guy, not like a 1 to 5 guy. And so one of the best things I ever did, my last agency, was hiring a CEO and really giving him the reins. And he got to be the guy with the title, and he's the person that people brought their problems to and looked up to. And he was in the office every day having conversations and meeting with team members and coaching them up on how to do their role and be better contributors. And that's just not me. I can't. Doesn't matter how much I care about the company or the people in the company. I suck at I suck at what I suck at, and I shouldn't do it.
That's super interesting, because the last 4 people I've had on have said very, very similar things. Like Harry Sanders from Studio Hawk, he said that he thought that he was the CEO until he realized he didn't like people management and KPIs. So he sat back as like more the founder and got somebody to fill that place. And it's really interesting. And yeah, Nick, you have done a lot in your entrepreneurial journey. You seem to be doing a million things every time I chat to you. What keeps you ticking?
I just like building stuff. I think that's the thing. It's like there's like a perpetual curiosity to just have some crazy idea and see if I can go do it. I think the thing that the thing that really changed my trajectory of my career was was being in Dan Martell's coaching program in 2018 and really taking the buy back your time philosophy. That was before he wrote the book, but the philosophy was still a big part of that course, that program. Taking that really seriously, which is what are the things that I really shouldn't be doing that I can pay other people to do? Where's my time really, really best and most effectively spent? And part of that, I think, is not just learning, but accepting failure. Like, failure is totally cool if you do it fast. Failure gets really problematic and expensive if you refuse to accept it.
Awesome. I love that. And I'm reading Brad Jacobs' book at the minute. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a great one.
He's built like 500 companies, and his biggest thing that he keeps on going on about is the acquisitions that he failed on are like the ones that he learned the most on. And it's about how fast you can go on to the next one and learn from it. But yeah, Nick, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really
Thanks for having me.
I think there's a lot of value. I'll put all your links, everything below. But yeah, man, thank you.
No, my pleasure, Josh. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, we'll be releasing episodes every single week, so subscribe to join us on the journey. We also have a free resource in the links where I asked 55 agency owners what's actually working in 2024, all anonymously. No fluff, no theory, just real data. So that'll be in the links below, or check out some of our other videos. See you in the next one.